everyone, this is Shefali Vasudev from the Voice of Fashion with one more edition of Questions No One Asks, a Lakmé Fashion Week programming part that we have been having in the last few seasons. Questions No One Asks is an interview format that we run on the magazine since our inception, and this edition is with journalists from newspaper media. On our platform, we have often asked questions from people working in magazines and even on online platforms, but we haven't had a chance to speak to newspaper journalists. And for this edition of Lakmé Fashion Week's digital first season fluid edition, on our panel, we have Namrata Zakaria, editor trends from Mumbai Mirror, Rosella Stephen, editor of the Hindu Weekend, Shweta Shivare, fashion writer from Mumbai Midday, and Varun Rana, brand consultant and commentator who has been in the past with fashion magazines and now writes for a number of online portals. All of us, all of you, write on fashion, and one of the reasons that it was on my wish list, my aspiration to have you on this platform is because you represent, especially Namrata, Shweta, and Rosella, you represent newspaper media amongst the strongest pillars of what we call media today. In fact, just this morning, Mint published a survey asking readers what was the most credible form of media and journalism, and a majority have chosen print, and you belong to print. So let us have this discussion about what is the fashion journalist, what does the fashion journalist mean today in India, and how do we see the fashion industry and consumers, luxury, etc. There are some contentious issues out there in front of us, but many of these might be issues that people want to hear from you. First, let me go to Namrata Zakaria. Do you think fashion journalists outside the fashion industry are taken seriously as people with opinions and skills?
I don't know if journalism is taken seriously these days. But your career and your job is as serious as you make it out to be. There are good journalists, there are bad journalists, there are mediocre journalists. There's media houses that do a great job, some who don't do a great job. So I think if one wants to wear the tag of fashion journalist very lightly and frivolously, that's entirely one's choice. And if one wants to take it seriously and be taken seriously in a newsroom, that's also one's choice, But your career and your job profile is really what you make of it and how you treat it. In any good newsroom, it's highly noisy, it's highly competitive. You have to fight for a toehold, you have to fight with your editor to get your story pitched, to convince why it should get a good space where you think it should be spaced. Those are the wonderful challenges of journalism, regardless of whatever beat you follow, whatever is your domain knowledge, whether it is crime or health or science or any beat. So if you think it's just another beat and that you do seriously and you do it well, you will be taken seriously and treated seriously. It's quite simple as that.
This question must come to you also. Rosella, let me ask you. I often meet with this, why are you wasting your time in fashion? People ask me. Are you asked this question, and do you ask this question of others as well?
Well, the answer is there is a purpose behind fashion, as we've all learned, and especially now during the pandemic. It's connected to economy, the commerce, everything else. You can't brush it away as showstoppers wearing something, or Bollywood actors, what they're wearing to the airport. It's not that at all. And these last 7 months have proved that. The connection to corridors, the connection to the economy. So I think now I have better answers to tell them. Though earlier I was fired by my fashion, and this was something that interested me, and stories need to be told, and doesn't just have to be who's wearing what. Those were the initial, that was the initial reasoning. Now that's changed. Now I can actually tell them this is how it's connected to the economy and to the people and to our society.
Shweta, do you continue to have to pitch your stories with a lot more vigor, or that time is over and the horizon has changed now, you feel, for fashion journalism?
I pitch the stories as passionately I used to, but now I think they're accepted more because they're coming from a place of where people can relate to them. So right now it's been okay. It's not been that difficult.
Yeah, when we spoke earlier in the day on an informal conversation, you also said that COVID has kind of course corrected this perception about
Yes,
fashion. So, can
yes.
you talk a moment about that, please?
Fashion in a way, fashion journalism in a way had become more about writing about showstoppers. I'm talking about fashion shows now. And it was the requisite, because we are a newspaper, we are a tabloid, we need to talk about, the showstoppers, which are the Bollywood people. But that has changed in a way that the celebrities are out of the picture because of whatever things that are happening. I was going to use something else. And so now the focus is more on fashion. And when I say fashion, it's not just about fashion, it's about designers. Earlier we used to speak about, we knew there were artisans, we knew there were karigars, we knew there were migrants, but nobody was speaking those stories. Now they are as important as designers, because designers now, when they have to unlock their factories, don't have their migrant workers who've gone back to the cities, to the villages. So I think that's been a really, really good change, in a way that you can look at fashion beyond designers.
And Varun, wouldn't you say that it is because of fashion journalists? You've been in the magazine scenario and you watched the media industry unfold. It's fashion journalists who bring in money to newspapers for the supplements, let's say Times of India supplements, Hindustan Times supplements, so many colored supplements with newspapers. Fashion could be the revenue earner. Perhaps all of you can speak on this, but Varun, it is the fashion writing or Bollywood or celebrity writing put together in one jumble, as Shweta was saying, that you wrote about the showstopper when you wrote about fashion, and this is money earning. Then why are we not taken so seriously?
I'm going to say something very, very colloquial. Uh, my music teacher, in school, when I was learning classical, she told me one thing. She said, Lakshmi and Saraswati do not live together. You know, the thing is, and of course, it's folk wisdom, and it's a clever thing to say. But if you look deep into it, the fact is, it's not just the fact of journalists bringing in money, or fashion reportage of some kind bringing in money to any publication, whether it's online or magazines or newspapers. It is the manner in which they are bringing the money in. The whole idea of advertising and advertorialing is built around building a fantasy which precludes, which excludes the possibility of talking about real things. That's what is happening, right? Before the pandemic, and I fully agree with Shweta over here, the pandemic has humanized the fashion industry in a way that was impossible without something as crazy as this happening to the world, right? Uh, all designers are so particular about the fantasy and the dream that they create, the vision that they have of themselves as creative people, and the ex woman or the ex male or whatever. But nobody wants to talk about the behind the scenes unless it also feeds into that dream and that fantasy. So when we talk about, say, migrant laborers, nobody is going to be interested in that story when that is not a national issue, right? No magazine is going to get money to be talking about issues. They're going to get money if they talk up your brand. They're going to get money if they talk up the fantasy or the dream that you're creating. So it is not just the outcome, but it is the process of that outcome which becomes really, really important for us to analyze. And it's not just money. And I think there has been a, a concerted effort throughout to sort of show fast fashion as something very frivolous and something which is very, like, but people don't realize that this industry employs millions of workers across the organized and unorganized sector.
No,
They are just
the value of the industry is one. The manufacture and business value is one. The value of the fashion journalist seems to be another. Have you seen these subtle distinctions or never? Namrata, Shweta, Rosella, can I ask you, how do you feel about this? Does the event, the host, the fashion industry itself think of us as somebody they can dispense with, as people they can dispense with?
My experience, my answer is an absolute no.
Yes.
I'm always at the center of every room I'm at. Uh, uh, but I also don't agree with the fact that fashion brings revenue to newspapers. I don't see any designers advertised because designers are medium and small size businesses. So more than one ad a year or two ads a year when they have their annual sales is really all that comes into newspapers, and it comes into only one or two very big newspapers.
I was trying not to use the word media net because I see some newspaper supplements earning in that form, and designers are a part of media net, but we can leave that aside and move on with your argument. Just to
Whatever
clarify.
advertising medium may be, whether it is mainstream or it is media net related, I mean, the fact is that they don't bring, fashion does not bring a majority of revenue that we see in newspapers like the Financial Times, for example,
Right.
has a weekend supplement dedicated on luxury completely. How to spend it is really my favorite. It's my dream job,
Yeah.
I stalked that Joe Ellison. But the point is, that is a very sophisticated economy. It's far more service driven, where fashion is very commonplace. Um, as a luxury business in retail, it's very prominent. You have brands, even brands like Burberry and I would say a Louis Vuitton or accessory brands, which will rub cheek by jowl advertising space, in like a Dolce Gabbana or a Prada, which is, far more fashion oriented, or even a Missoni. So they all advertise and they get the space that they pay for. And I think that also leads to why newspaper owners become interested in fashion, because it is
Potential.
a more developed sort of an industry organization with a formal way of advertising and reaching out to the readers. So yeah, so I was saying, that it's multiple things, and the joys and the challenges of working in a newspaper is that you're speaking to a multiple group of people, and you
Right.
must have them interested, you must keep them engaged, and you must approach fashion in multiple ways so that you get a bigger audience.
So Rosella, this thing of just to continue the probing a little and see what we get of it, being taken as people of skill, merit, or value by the industry, sometimes it seems to me that the designer ecosystem, the fashion ecosystem, values journalists who quote unquote support them. And when the journalist wants a completely, takes another point of view or wants to make a point, whether it is about business, about evolution of the designer's ideas, or anything else, then the support is not seen and the journalist becomes a less valuable person. Would you agree you got those vibes from the fashion industry?
Well, that is true, because every time you reach out for a story, if it's a positive story, if it's pegged to something fantastic, of course they'd want to be featured. But otherwise, if it's a business story, it's slower to kind of get cleared. Having said that, possibly because it's the Hindu with a huge subscription base, huge readership, you're not as quickly turned away, or there's no hemming and hawing. You're likely to get an audience. You're likely to ask your questions, possibly get half of those answers. So I think possibly because we don't do too many fashion stories, when we do fashion stories, I have been able to get responses. But it's not like the Western media, where you can actually break down things with fashion, whatever business of fashion, or what the others do. You don't see that in India. There is a line, and you don't cross that line.
I feel that too. Shweta, where do you stand on this?
My job at Midday actually is to inform readers, and I don't work for designers or the industry. That's my So I have to inform my readers what is going on. Yes, a lot of stories, designers just disappear on you. You know, when you ask them tough questions, because they all want to know when you'll carry the, you know, the announcement about their next new collection, or, you know, the next new event that they're doing. So I think newspapers, yes, in a way, are looked at as magazines, in the sense that because magazines have a bigger reach, newspapers have a bigger reach, combining Mirror, Hindu, and Midday. You know.
I can't agree more because constantly they want to rationalize so much of the
Yeah.
decisions that they took instead of sometimes being stunned by situation. This is a
Yes.
situation that has stunned all industries and
Hmm.
fashion especially. But because of these conflicts, Varun, I want to bring my next question to you is you moved from being a features director at a fashion magazine to numerous other off-brand consultancy, and you continue to write for a few platforms. Don't you see a conflict of interest? Do your editors insist that you have to run a disclaimer at the bottom of your article? And today you are with Angadi. Would you really would you pitch for a piece on Angadi to any newspaper? How do you distinguish these roles?
I think the distinction, exists within. First of all, when I so now let's talk about it in two ways. Personally, when I took on this role, it was it was made very clear, and there was absolutely clarity between me and my clients that there would be no conflict of interest. I would continue to write on fashion. If today one of my editors comes and asks me to interview the founder of the company that I work with, I would do that, and I would do it to the standards that I hold any other person that I'm interviewing. Okay. That's one thing. Secondly, I think I've been immensely lucky that I have deep roots in this industry and in fashion reporting. So, right from the various magazines I've worked at, or the various websites I write for, or the now majorly even the Hindu, and Rosella is my editor at the Hindu. So, I do not perceive of any conflict of interest arising at any time. Going back to what actually a little bit what Shweta and Rosella were talking about, the relationships. You know, thankfully, I think all the panelists on this chat with you, Shefali, have amazing relationships in the industry that we've all built over the years, and that's why we are able to nudge the people the way that we are, and that's why, for example, before the lockdown, when I wrote about how the fashion industry was silent in the face of the anti-CAA protests and everything that was breaking out at the beginning of the year, till the pandemic sort of took over our consciousness completely. Uh, I got a lot of traffic, as in like calls and messages from various designers. Some were, most of them actually happened to be very positive feedback, saying, "Okay, somebody has said it. You know, designers are not supporting their Muslim karigars," and a few of them were cautioning me, saying that. So this goes to show that there is a relationship that is required, and people can move away or towards, but in the interest of the industry, like Shweta said, we have to realize that our job is we are not working with or for the designers.
Namrata, I mean, Varun and all of you spoke about, Varun, you especially used the word relationships. I find these relationships tricky. Uh, I mean, some of us may have a few close friendships, but these relationships can turn chameleonic from time to time. And I want to ask you that when we stand against a designer with whom we have a relationship with, which is a relationship of understanding, of intellectual friendship, and tomorrow we say, no, you know, this doesn't work what you did, and you take an open public stand. Fashion is also a bitchy industry. They turn otherwise, and they don't talk to you for a couple of years. How do you negotiate through those tidings? Namrata, would you like to speak about it?
You know, we talk about relationships in fashion journalism as it's very different and unique to maybe any other beat, but it really isn't. You know,
It isn't.
it
Yeah.
isn't. Every person who has a company or is a public figure thinks a journalist is a mouthpiece for them, and if they're friends with you, if they've had a glass of wine with you, your buddies or my yar, and you should just say what they want you to say. But in any field of journalism, in any beat, your first loyalty lies to your reader, and if you don't do that, then you lose credibility. You're puncturing your own career, right? So, and also journalism is the mediator between the world and the reader, and if you remove yourself from that role and you're looking for a social upgrade, or you're looking to to party, um, it's all going to reflect in your work, and it's going to you're going to hurt yourself more than anybody else. So if you know what your role is and what your career demands of you, then it's really very easy. That said, if we're talking about fashion critiques or fashion criticism, there is less and less place for that across all media today. Newspapers have it slightly better, like I said, because we're not dependent on designers for advertising. Magazines are completely dependent on them, so you won't see any critique out of them. It's really a question of economics, which is also why Varun can master so many roles, because it constantly requires you to reinvent. Journalism is also in such an economic crisis. We've had severe pay cuts. It is a question of survival for all of us. When whatever is putting food on your plate or a little money in your bank, go for it.
Shweta, what do you think about this? Have you been at the receiving end? I have been, and so I feel a little free to ask this question. At the receiving end of designers' displeasure when you write authentically and transparently and true to the spirit of your job, and as you said, you don't work for the designer. How do you wade through these?
There have been too many instances, Shefali. Too many instances where designers have one day, showered me with love, so to say, and the next day completely ignored me. But they just come around, Shefali. You just have to let them come around. And if they don't, then they don't. There are too many fish in the sea, and there are other designers that you can then focus on. But designers don't have that kind of bandwidth to understand that it's nothing personal. You're looking at something and it's not agreeing with whatever he's been doing or she's been doing for so long, or it's not complementing the times that we are in, then they don't understand it, and they will try to explain it, but no. And I used to take it very seriously, Shefali. There used to be times and oh God, he's not talking to me, he's ignoring me, he's such a big designer, what will I do, whom will I approach? But you evolve and you're like, okay, if you don't want to speak to me, it's okay.
It really shouldn't
matter. It really, at one point, Namrata, it did, but now it doesn't anymore. I guess you grew up, you mature.
It's still hazard. We have hazard.
I think Shweta I think it's great, Shweta, that you are able to sort of talk about it so openly, because it's not just designers. There are other sort of more related and auxiliary figures and
like the PRs.
Like the PRs, like organization bodies,
yes,
like everybody.
yes,
I mean,
yes.
people are gatekeepers, and they're placed at the entrance where the funnel gets the the narrowest,
right.
And they are like the gatekeepers, So, and there's always that conflict, and God knows all of us have had many of those instances. But Shefali, I think it's a lot of water under the bridge.
Rosella, as editor of the Hindu Weekend, which is the lifestyle section, let's say, do you help your team to draw clear boundaries by saying, don't party with people you write on, do not accept gifts, X, Y, Z? Is there a do or don't, said or unsaid?
Okay, so earlier when I was at the Express, it was easier to say this. It was easier to put down these rules and say, you don't accept gifts, you don't. Do remember at the end of the day, they're friends with you. I mean, primarily because, of your position. It was a black and white situation. But now I don't think you can say that as easily, because they all have their relationships. They're also woke. So, I don't think it's right now to, create those boundaries for them. But you can tell them what happens. You can identify. You can give them examples of, what happens when, things go down. So it's more of a, doing it from the sidelines, as opposed to don't hang out, realize that they want something from you, or, this is why you're being wined and dined. I did do that earlier. I don't do that any longer. I let them choose for themselves or decide for themselves.
Varun, I did ask you this question and I'll ask again. Junkets and gifts. How does one make the distinction and what should be the morality here? Or should it be completely case to case, person to person?
I think the case. I think let's define morality. I think morality is something highly personal. I would not. I'm very wary of putting out blanket rules or advisories, general advisories. I don't believe in them. I think everybody is here to find their own way in a whatever moral or spiritual sense. I'll tell you, I will speak only of my experience. I worked mostly in magazines. So, of course, the rules were there on paper. They were not so strongly enforced at the time, and I don't think they still are. It is an ecosystem that has been built through designers, PR managers, companies, agencies, and, of course, publications. Gifts exchange hands all the time, and that's par for the course. We are sort of initiated into it in our early years. Of course, wining and dining, free foreign trips, but you cannot look at it as a traffic, as a one lane traffic. You have to understand the larger sort of context in which these things sort of tend to gain a certain meaning. I will tell you myself that I don't come from a family of great means. I did not grow up having foreign holidays or my mother wearing, expensive French designers or, Italian bags and handbags and shoes. But this is the career that I chose, and I was passionate about it. And being able to visit foreign countries on brand sponsored trips gave me that worldview and gave me an experience of that kind of lifestyle. Receiving certain gifts gave me the experience of how a person would use these products and accessories and skincare and everything. So it informed my worldview, it informed my opinion. I was part of a system, I worked the system. Over time, I developed my own sort of morality where I made an internal rule, which I said, okay, if I'm going to receive something, I will check its price, and it's easy now to check prices online. I will check its price, and if I can't afford it, I will return it back with a beautiful thank you note handwritten. And if I can afford it, I will accept it with good grace. And that is a system that I built for myself.
So,
magazine editors don't generally sort of question it so much.
right. But Namrita, I read all of your work, and you write from a first person experiential point of view always, mostly, and you tell the reader this is what you saw, you felt, you observed, you used, whether it is the beauty parlor or a product. Sometimes, and so it comes across it's almost a disclaimer that you have used the product and so forth. But do you feel it's also important to run a disclaimer for the reader at the bottom of such piece that I was on this trip or this or that, or do newspapers mandate it or they don't?
So we are not allowed any junkets, so to speak. But I don't know where you think. I think what you mean is when I do my columns, right? Which are
your columns, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Meaning it's an experience. Suppose you were to go on a trip, since your stance is sharing your point of view through the experience you have had, let's say, that is your style. But suppose you were to go on a trip with Fendi or with whoever, how would you deal with it?
If I think I have a story which I would like to do it,
Right.
which I can work on, then I would take it. If there is no story there for me and for my editor and my readers, then obviously I have to decline it. That's pretty much how it works for us. Yeah.
Representative of the magazine space. In magazines, it works very differently. You have to sort of take it. And once you're invited, then that's when you build that context and you build that story before even going. And that's exactly what happens in the magazine space, because it's very, very advertiser led. Whereas in newspapers, I think editors have, like Rosella and Namrata and Shweta will tell you, the editors have that final deciding say that, okay, no, we don't think it's fitting into, like Namrata said, a larger cultural context or whatever, then, we're not going to go. But magazines don't have that choice.
But Namrata, Shweta, and Rosella are all of your senior journalists. You both have the power to say no because you have worked long enough and nobody's going to bullshit you. But younger colleagues of yours, how do they navigate through these? Do they follow? So let's say Midday. Let me ask about Midday. So they clearly must have to follow newspaper instructions. Junkets not allowed, and if allowed, there would be a disclaimer. Would it be like?
Yes, there is a disclaimer. Even when you do a food review, there is a disclaimer. So the fact that we've paid for our meal, and that's why we are reviewing this restaurant. So Midday is very strict about such things. And and again, there have been so many junkets, Shefali, that we've said no to. And in the recent past, because when they, it's not just a free holiday, what are you going to come back and tell the reader about? You have to, then think about what you're going to tell the reader. And if that, there is nothing there to tell the reader, we just say, sorry, we can't accept the junket.
There are no free lunches, basically.
There are no free lunches. And like I said, Shefali, it's across beats, you see.
Yeah.
I mean, now, all the junkets, so to speak, have gone to influencers. Nobody's bothered about a journalist anymore.
So that's the thing. So when you turn down a junket, I mean, this has happened with me and my colleagues. You turn down a junket, you say that the story does not work for us. They will invite an influencer. The influencer will do about 5 or 6 or 7 stories on that trip, and then will pitch 2 of those stories to you. And it may not come to you, it may go to another editor who will say, yeah, okay, fine, let's carry it. So, so then you wonder, should I have sent somebody after all? And,
Has that happened? That's very sort of ironical.
What she's saying.
I think it happens to people mostly with like Instagram followers, who have high followers. I mean, all they want is, whether it's food,
yes,
restaurants, or if it's travel stories. Mirror doesn't do any travel or restaurant stories at all. Disclaimers are not required. We just have a blanket rule. We just don't do that. But I think now the trend is to lure the influencers with, their sort of marketing. And that's pretty much where the trend is going.
How do you build a voice? Why do people read you? Why do people listen to you? How come you have made it so big in fashion journalism? Some of the arguments that you made, give me those answers anyway. But let me ask each of you, what does it mean when you say, I have a voice, I have an opinion in fashion? How do I articulate it? How have you built it? Namrata, let's start with you.
It comes from, a fire in your belly. It comes from, taking yourself and what you do very sincerely. It comes from being ambitious. It comes from being a fighter and a survivor. And it comes from working very, very hard at a space that doesn't give you a lot of leg room or a toehold, and you have to go into the newsroom and fight every day. But it's also a very exciting thing to do into your soul, into your mind. The better your writing is going to be, the better your presentation is going to be, your voice is going to come from everything that's around you. So if you have your eyes and your ears open, your voice is going to be a very strong voice.
Rosella, can you define Rosella Stephen writing on fashion? What is she about?
Okay, I'm not, Namrata, of course, is our star, but yes. But the thing is, I've realized over the years that designers also gauge you for what you are, and then they kind of, even with the PRs, initially you do get the same requests, and then gradually as they realize that you're turning down a lot of things, or you're focused on what you want from the story, you're not too focused on the freebies or the dinners and the trips, then they slowly begin to respect you, and gradually you get your story, and if you want something to be told, then you can go out and tell. There are people to help you with those stories. So I think that's what it's been in my case.
Building the byline, as they call it, it's byline being such a passionate newspaper journalism word that my heart beats for
No
it.
longer. No
Well, my
longer.
heart still beats for the byline.
Yeah.
How do you build the byline? How did you build your byline?
Are you asking me or Namrata?
Shweta.
Shweta, okay. I'm actually an accidental journalist, Shefali. I got into journalism because I wanted some more time to get married, and that was my escape. And it just got into it. I just went to Asian Age, I remember, and I met MJ Akbar, controversial name to mention, and just started with my job. And my last internship was at Verve magazine, and they're like, okay, you've done internship at Verve, you're going to do fashion. That's how I got into fashion. But then I got interested in it because I've always kept a diary, so I think I'm a writer. And I got interested in it, and it's difficult. It was difficult because there was no one to look up to, so to say, when I started writing on fashion. And whatever you looked up to were magazines like Femina, Cosmopolitan, and it has been it has been everything on the job and learning on the job. At one point, I thought that I don't know much about fashion, so I decided I'm going to take a sabbatical and move to London, and then did my course there. Realized I didn't need to quit my job. I knew everything I did, on my job. So, but it feels nice. But when you write, Shefali, you don't think that you're doing it for a byline or you're doing it for the accolade. You're just doing it because you've observed something and you want to write about it. That's all there is. And I think most of us, on the panel will agree that byline is just a residue, of what you really believe and what you want to write about.
Arun, what do you think? Do you agree with Shweta that the byline is a residue and it's the rest, it's the process that matters?
Yeah.
I would agree. I think it's a story that needs to be told, and the byline comes along with it. That's it. It's not what leads the story for me. But I guess Namrata and Varun.
Varun, what do you think?
I think I will tread cautiously here, and this may completely be my vanity speaking, and I humbly admit to that. I think, and this again, as Rosella said, that after as you grow in your job or in your role, it could be at one publication or through multiple publications, or even through, in my case, through multiple roles within the fashion industry as an organism by itself. You start getting taken seriously for the things that you're not willing to sort of give out, or how for lack of a better term, how not easy you are. And then start getting associated with a certain kind of output, certain kind of writing, right? What is that? That is also a series of conscious choices, and you are building, whether you realize it or not, and we have to admit it to ourselves, you are building the brand that you are, or you are building the person, the professional that you are.
That is sitting amidst us. Let's talk about it. It's the arrival of the fashion film in India.
Oh,
And
Lord.
we've seen a few. We have seen at Couture Week. We are seeing it unfold right now at Lotus Makeup India Fashion Week. What do you guys think? Is this format working for you? How do you want to really report it? I read Shweta's piece on Couture Week and I got her point of view. But Shweta, so let's start with you. What didn't work for you in the fashion film format?
There was no story.
There was no story.
There was no story. It was a fashion advertisement, like I told you in the morning, like Manyavar. I'm talking about Bridal Week now.
Yeah.
So apart from Gaurav Gupta, I think he was quite brave to show what he did, and it didn't look like a fashion film. It looked like an off-site show, with that rough edges, etc. But and they were so long, Shefali. We have a life. We can't just keep watching. It was so long, and it just didn't appeal to me. There was just no story to it.
Namrata, what do you have to say about the fashion film?
I'm thoroughly enjoying that. I think it's very, it's the need of the hour, and I love to see how the industry is um, reinventing itself during a global crisis. It's really the only way they can present what they do, and it's the lockdown has been massive for the designers, for all the brands. I also think that it's a great it's a great demarking. It separates the wheat from the chaff. You know how a designer is running his business just by that 8 minute, 10-minute film. You know how sophisticated he is. You know how tech savvy he is. You know what his brand story is, how his narrative. I mean, everything that he's trying to. I mean, there are designers who are still struggling with their social media, right? They're not able to treat their social media or their Instagrams like their business card. And now this fashion film is becoming your business card, and it's very tedious for the fashion designers, who are just so easy as the show kar liya, after party, then we'll go to this one's house, but this is so challenging and it's so demanding of them. And I'm loving to see this history being made. I'm loving to see the business in transition. And of course, some people do a decent job of it. Some people do a crap job of it, and it's nice to laugh at them. But
Rosella, would you agree with Namrata?
I would to an extent. I also feel it's an interim, as in I don't think it's going to stay this way. So it's going to be this for maybe this season, and that's it. And they're going to move on. But what they could do, and that's why I am disappointed sometimes, is make better use of this medium. I don't, everything doesn't have to look like a music video. At the end of the day, I would like to see, more detailing. I would like to see close-ups. I'd like to see, what these garments are made of. They don't all have to be like an Oscar winner wannabe, they can get down to brass tacks. So I think sometimes they don't make the best use of the medium, which I'm hoping they will do. So for me, and also see now, buy now, little aspects which can be introduced. So I think that will be introduced slowly, just have to give them some time.
But Shefali, it also throws light onto the relevance of the fashion show. I mean, why do designers have fashion shows?
It's good for now. Would we want to be subjected to this every season?
I mean, the thing is, the whole idea of the show will happen if somebody sponsors it. But if the sponsors have no money, there's going to be no show.
Right.
And the industry then bit by bit might become irrelevant in parts. So certain parts of it will stay and other parts will perhaps fall off. But Varun, I understand that you are not a big fan of the fashion film, or how do you feel?
In fact, I recently wrote an article for The Hindu where I said in the headline that the designer is dead and long live the art director. And it was something very simple. I don't think people are pushing the medium far enough. We cannot treat our designers like babies, I feel. They've had as much time to transition to and get used to the digital mediums as we all have. They are business owners, first and foremost. We cannot treat them as helpless, creative, artisanal artists, right? This is a medium that is changing the world. They have to recognize it. They have to master it in the same time that anybody else has been given. This is a medium that allows you to literally explore the limits of your storytelling abilities. An Instagram IGTV video, uploading an IGTV video, a teenager does that today. What are you as a creative force in this industry, as a designer? What are you trying to say? What are the tools at your disposal? Is it just about clothes? It's not about clothes anymore. Clothes will go up on your website or on a multi-designer outlet's website in the next couple of months. If somebody wants to see clothes, they can just wait for it for 2 days and see it. What are you saying? That this is no longer a game of big money anymore.
Exactly.
No longer a game of
having lots of money. It's not about having lots of money. You can create the most beautiful visual presentation in a small budget as well. The only limitation is your creative vision. People just run to agencies and video production houses. That's the easiest, most lazy way to do this.
But what about bringing, as some would argue, and I think Namrata, you might want to talk about it, how does the Bollywood showstopper, which has been the cherry on the pudding of Indian fashion for a long time, if designers were to bring the Bollywood showstopper to a fashion film, do you think it would raise its popularity value or raise its interest level to some extent? Are we missing the Bollywood showstopper in the fashion film at all?
Really know how to answer that because, like I said, it's such a new medium. And I think 200 viewers is not a small size, because I would imagine about 200-300 people fit into a fashion show in any case. But the influence of Bollywood is not going to go away either in a fashion film or in their digital presence on their social media or whatever. And it's just the easiest and the biggest real life influencer that this country has given you. And it works for designers in many ways, in a good way in many ways, and for some it doesn't work at all. But I cannot imagine a movie star agreeing to do a fashion film unless she or he is a personal friend and can give the time and then for all of that. But I don't think it's being missed right now, but it will be interesting to see how it develops, over time, if we have another season of fashion films, because this is the first time most people are doing it. It's the first season. We've had Couture Week and we have the Fashion Week in Delhi that's going on right now that's been doing it. But it'll be interesting to see how things pan out. Our reactions to the lockdown have been so varied. Some of us, who come from privilege and are, who have homes, have been happy to be at home, and those who, had to walk multiple states to reach their home have just had it so rough. And I thought that especially in fashion, we're just so dependent on the hand-skilled worker, on the artisan, on the migrant, as we rudely call them. I wanted to see their reactions, and I wanted to see. I really wanted them to be far more involved than they are, and I think that a lot of designers support their staff very well. A lot of Indian art is popular today, by the dint of designers commercializing it. So full respect to that. But I wanted to discuss the economic divide that exists in the fashion industry, where a majority. So it's a question that I wrote in one of my columns, and that question stayed with me because it kept coming back to me, and people kept discussing it. What is the difference between a designer and an artisan? So I spoke to Tina Tailiani of Onsom, and I said I wanted to do this and whether she would help me with her e-commerce support. And Baradri was very simply a fundraising sale where I took 2 or 3 pieces from as many designers who wanted to donate, and we had about 110 of them. And
Karina.
Why Karina? I just phoned her. I messaged her actually the next day, and I said, I want to do this. Would you lend your name to me? And this is what it is, and this is what I think we can do with it. And she agreed immediately. And I needed to get, I wanted to get a movie star on board, because I think when a movie star speaks, people listen. And I think to have somebody like Karina, who is, of course, she's beautiful and she's stylish and she's bloody talented, and that's there for everyone to see. But she's also such a working girl, she's a working mom, and she was a full-on partner. She was a very good partner. She selected the name Baradri with me. From the first day right until, and it took us 3 months, right until the end of the sale, she was involved in everything. I only wanted her name, but then she agreed to do interviews. She agreed to, to be the brand ambassador, so to speak.
Right. Shweta, do you agree that the Bollywood celebrity is the ultimate in fashion to get the point across?
I don't think it's the ultimate to get the point across, but Bollywood does play a role, Shefali, especially in India, where they are so obsessed with Bollywood. If Karina takes up a cause like Baradri, it does help.
Not just Baradri, but let's say fashion magazines, stories, the showstopper bit. Are they going to see them continuing as really the most important real estate in the kind of work?
I have very strong opinions about this. I feel like Bollywood has not allowed the Indian industry to grow, in the sense that if a Bollywood star is supposed to be a showstopper, then everything is about that showstopper. It's about that personality. And there's nothing about clothes then. then it actually puts me off designers when they sell their collection saying that she's going to be my showstopper. So I think Bollywood in a way has really hampered the growth, so to say, of the Indian fashion industry to be taken seriously. But they do have a role to play. So if a designer could just have a showstopper, okay, and not build a collection or build the whole pitch around that, then I think it would really help, because then my mother won't be thinking, oh, Kareena Kapoor was the showstopper at so and so show. So the clothes must be good. So that's what has happened now, because Bollywood celebrity endorses, the designers status just goes up. And she doesn't know what I do for a living, which is write about those clothes. So I think what we've really not managed to have that kind of synergy between the two, Bollywood and fashion, like it has happened internationally. I don't know how we can do it, but yes, Bollywood is important, and Bollywood does help sell.
Varun, you know this story very well. In magazines, all they have is Bollywood cover stars. And
Yeah.
did you ever stand up and oppose that, or no, it was okay with you?
I think as a magazine journalist, whichever magazine I've been has been. All the three magazines that I work with, I was part of the launch teams, right? And those magazines were launched in India amid certain amount of competition. So there was no question that we would need Bollywood on our covers. I think, the couple of things that sell very well in India: Bollywood, cricket, and, well, certain other things which we will not name here.
Well, sex for one.
So, sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's
Great.
not. I feel there's not enough sex in
Yeah.
fashion reportage and fashion
No,
coverage.
even in the social cultural conversation, we don't talk about sex. But I didn't mean sex. I meant fractal sort of communalism and.
Know the
Yeah.
word.
Yeah, I was talking about divisive communal politics and whatnot. That also seems to sell a lot these days.
I want
So
to ask Rosella if you think that the currently slightly dented image of Bollywood celebrity, is it going to change anything in the minds of brands and fashion designers, or will they continue to run after, as will readers after Bollywood?
Well, I think for the smaller actors, there may be a difference, but for the bigger ones, let's say if we're talking about Deepika Padukone or the bigger ones, I don't think it's going to make much of a difference. But yes, when they're signing their endorsement, the papers, I'm guessing they're going to be a little more clauses now, morality clauses or the moral code or something like that. There'll be more of that, but I don't see it really affecting the impact of Bollywood when it comes to lifestyle. Promoting lifestyle.
I mean, I know I've been speaking to a couple of my friends in Bombay, and I've sort of heard rumors about the smaller, sort of younger stars losing their endorsement deals in the wake of the whole, the media trial and the allegations of, drugs and whatnot. So, sorry, Namrata, I seem to have cut you. You were saying something?
Also red carpet dressing. I mean, to dress a movie star, and if that picture is picked up by your Yogen Shahs and Manav Manglanis and whatever they do, whatever movie stars, I mean, the airport looks is the biggest runway that we have right now, So the lure to dress Bollywood stars exists because their pictures get shared the most. Is it damaging the industry or commercializing it? I think the answer is quite obvious, right? Because I mean, it's getting them noticed. It's getting them. It's helping their businesses. I mean, that's really what
works for both sides, isn't it?
Yeah, but then people don't talk about clothes.
Yeah,
and then how will you have, fashion taken seriously when people don't talk about clothes? It just
talk about clothes and what is to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
At the larger socio-cultural context, if it's only limited to Bollywood stars, then it narrows down again. And, it should force all of us as part of the fashion media to think of ways to make it more relevant.
The fashion show is a branding exercise. Even a fashion critique is a branding exercise, as is a film critique, because I don't know if, I'm sure anybody in the film business will tell you, nobody's going to read a review and say, oh, it's got a good review, I'm going to watch this film. I mean, I don't think Salman Khan has got many good reviews, but he's all his films make a few hundred crores on a bad day. The same with fashion journalism. If I say X designer has put out a shit collection, I mean, he may sell out to his NRI clients or to the Sindhi ladies or to anybody. He may have his old clientele. So it's very egotistical for us to say that our review is very important. The reason why it is important is because it sort of establishes a reputation. It assists a brand in its branding. It doesn't drive his sales. Nothing is going to drive his sales except his business team and his business model itself.
Okay, before we all go away, as parting short, crisp answers to a last question I have for all of you is, how do you view the digital media? You are all print, especially Rosella, Shweta, Namrata, you belong to the much worshipped print. And Varun and I can perhaps stand back and listen. What do you think about digital media? Do you believe in its credibility? Do you enjoy it?
Yes, I think that was one of the inflection points with fashion, digital coming in to the extent that newspapers were kind of following, what was happening online. But once the newspapers began getting their act together, then it's all the same field. However, when you're talking about a newspaper, as Namrata mentioned initially, it's not just one segment. It's not just one influencer talking about fashion or food or whatever. It's a mix of everything. So I think, of course, people would say that, newspapers, people at newspapers, dinosaurs. But I would like to be the dinosaur as long as I enjoy it. And so far, I think it is quite enjoyable. Having said that, I love what the influencers are doing.
Let me come to you.
We already have that.
Yeah.
We've already adopted the digital medium. I don't have a problem with it actually, because it just opens up your writing to so many more people. And I think it's the pace is as hectic as a newspaper, because
Right.
digitally you have to always churn out new stuff, because otherwise your users are not going to visit your site. So I love the digital media. If you're talking about websites, yes.
Namrata, does digital media interest you at all?
The thing is, it's not print versus digital as any,
Yeah.
which is really the right way to look at it. In an ideal scenario and in an ideal economy, all sorts of media should thrive. It should be newspapers, magazines, social, digital, radio. Everything should be thriving. But I feel right now, especially, and I see this all over the world, not only in India, media is having its worst existential crisis ever.
Right.
Of course, the credibility is completely at stake with the advent of fake news, which has been completely dangerous. People are relying on WhatsApp more than it's the most dangerous. It's swinging elections. It's completely destroying the idea of the fourth estate, which is one of the pillars of society. But every media form, so to speak, whether it is print or media or digital, has its limitation.
Varun, if you had a choice to join a magazine or an online platform, which one would you choose today?
I think it would depend entirely on the title and the team. I don't think. If you have something important to say, you can write it with a stick on the sand on the beach, or you can give it to a calligrapher to illuminate in golden words, or you can type it on a typewriter, or you can type it on your laptop. I think that decision would come down to the place, the work culture that it would represent, and the team that I would be working with.
Each other in some form. Thank you.
Even with the Hindu, there are about 35 million unique users on the website for the Hindu.
Wow.
Which is huge. But again,
that's why I pitch my stories to Rosella all the time.
correct.
So I have to pitch my stories to a
together.
now.
All right.
Yes. Well, the romance of the black and white newspaper does interest me a lot. And when I said the byline, when I see my byline in a newspaper, the kick is completely different. The adrenaline shift is completely different from seeing it in other forums. Thank you all of you, Namrata Zakaria, Varun Rana, Shweta Shivare, Rosella Stephen, for this edition of Questions No One Asks. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.